All right, in continuation of Exodus 16, 15, and then we do 35 also. It says, "And when the children of Israel saw it, they said one to another, It is manna, for they wist not what it was. And Moses said unto them, This is the bread which the Lord had given you to eat." And then we jump to 35. "And the children of Israel did eat manna 40 years until they came to a land inhabited. They did eat manna until they came unto the borders of the land of Canaan." So we can see that God provided for them 40 years. And of course, that is why in verse 3, 1 Corinthians 10:3 says, "And did all eat the same spiritual meat," which is what we've just read in Exodus 16, and it is something for us to remember. Verse 4, 1 Corinthians 10:4, "And did all drink the same spiritual drink, for they drank of that spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ." We can see that all of this is pointing to the fact that God was with them. God was protecting them. God was allowing them to be with them. However, they did not follow. They did not allow God to dwell in them, and they did that which they wanted, in spite of the fact that Christ was with them. So we are giving you examples of what God has done, that instead of appreciating, instead of thanking God, instead of worshiping God, instead of serving God, people have turned their backs upon God, and that's why we say, let us not tempt Christ. Verse 5, "But with many of them God was not well pleased, for they were overthrown in the wilderness." What do you mean overthrown? They were killed in the wilderness because they never actually surrendered themselves or appreciated what God did for them, and they were led into sin, and they fell and were overthrown in the wilderness. Verse 6, "Now these things were our examples, to the intent we should not lust after evil things as they also lusted." So God is telling us that these were examples for them, for them and also for us, because what they did and others saw it and they took notice. So in our case, that we have seen it, and we should not also engage in anything that would tempt God, that would tempt Christ, because by doing so we are tempting Christ, and we have to be careful that we don't engage in anything like that. Now these things, they were also again examples to the intent we should not lust after evil things as they also lusted. Verse 7, "Neither be ye idolaters, as were some of them, as it is written, the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play." This word here is not an ordinary word to say that they just rose up to play. It means that they began to do something which was against God. And so what they did was bad, was evil. And so they became idolaters. They started serving evil. And that is what happened there. They became immoral. They became, they had parties. When Prophet Moses was in the wilderness, went up to be with the Lord, then they started doing things that they were not supposed to do, and it caused so many things, bad things happened to them. So all of this was pointing to the fact that they were tempting God when they became unruly and they started doing things which was ungodly. And so we need to continue to pray that the Lord should help us so that we don't behave in any of those ways that they did, as that will cause a problem. Neither let us, verse 8, 1 Corinthians 10:8. Neither let us commit fornication, as some of them committed and fell in one day. 23,000 fell. And sometimes we say, oh no, it's not possible. But here, this is what the Word of God is saying. It happened. Many people, majority, went with the crowd. They went about, oh, the crowd is doing it, I will do it too. Verse 9, 1 Corinthians 10:9. Neither let us tempt Christ, as some of them also tempted and were destroyed of serpents. You know, what did they do? All of those things that they did, they became, they were saying things. And while we said, well, we are not doing the same thing and all that, we have been given so much protection, so much blessings. In return, what are we doing for what God has done for us? All right? So, for what they were given, they decided to be ungrateful. They didn't appreciate that God would be with them. They didn't think that God will protect them. They didn't think that God would do all the things that God had already promised. And so they began to do things which was ungodly and even to tempt Christ. When we say, oh no, I'm not tempting Christ, but what are we doing nowadays? We say we are Christians. We say we have received the blessings, but what are we doing in turn to show that we are fully in appreciation of what God has done for us? Look at them. They tempted Christ. And what happened in the result? They saw things they didn't want to see, they didn't want to do. So, and then what also happened was that it wasn't good. Okay, Numbers 21. Let's read that. Okay, we'll start from 4 to 9. And they, which means the Israelites, journeyed from Mount Hor by the way of the Red Sea,